War, the 14th of May 2024. A short video, I promise. Vladimir Putin, rightly or wrongly, won his election by a landslide. I know people can say if you're a serious opponent, you'd end up in a body bag, and I think that probably is right. If you weren't a serious opponent, he'd find some way of keeping you out, and there was no real proper election. Well, that's my view of it, but he does have the overwhelming support of his countrymen, and I believe in a real fair election, he might have still scored 60%, which would be very big. But in any event, it doesn't matter. He's there now, and that's what matters. And he's as healthy as a wild duck. And all the wishful thinking reports from the left-west media that he's dying of cancer is all hogwash. You want to see the videos on YouTube. He's devastated. He's beaten. Russian video of a forest in Ukraine showed the bodies of hundreds of Ukrainian men who all died on the front. And I have long said they should run. And if they came to Ireland, I wouldn't make them citizens or do anything like that. I'd give them enough to eat, a few cigarettes, and let them into an open place to stay, or somewhere in military barracks, till all of this passes, which it invariably will. I don't agree with bringing all the half of Ukraine over here, but I do the other all right. One wood has up to 200 bodies decomposing. That's how serious this is. In any event, Vladimir Putin has kept on his foreign secretary, Lavrov, and he is a very, very able performer, even though he is 74 years old. And I believe he wanted to retire, but he was persuaded to stay on at this crucial time. And so that's a very wise decision. Now, one of the things he did do is he got rid of his military leader, his defense leader, I suppose you call him, Saigov anyway, Saigov, and he was a friend of his. So he must think he had better. And the person he replaced him with is Andrei Belousov, Belousof. And he has military experience, all right. He's the new defense minister, but he's also a very, very prominent economist. He's a prominent economist. And that would indicate to me how Vladimir Putin is thinking, and how I would be thinking in his situation. They are not only fighting in the Ukraine militarily, they know it's a proxy war by the United States and NATO and the European Union and the European countries against Russia. The motive was to drive him out of power, replace him with a puppet government, and rifle and take all the resources of Russia. The same was the plan for Ukraine, so that looks to be defeated. So the big finance houses, the big pension funds, and all of this that are all ready to rob all these goods are defeated. And this guy, Belousov, is big into the financial part of it, and he will now be looking at how the war in the Ukraine, possibly in Gaza too, and in Israel, and the situation in Africa, in the West African Sahel states, can be turned against the West to completely and utterly bankrupt them. And be of no doubt, the motive of Vladimir Putin is to leave the people of Europe and America and Canada eating out of dustbins, so they turn against themselves for a piece of food. I have no doubt that's his motive. And if I were in his place, I think I would be doing something similar. So they'll be planning the war like this. Now, in Mali, the French were kicked out of all those states in Africa. They don't like it, but they're gone. The French people voted for Macron. I would imagine Marine Le Pen might have done a better job there, but they decided on that fella, and they haven't, so there you are. But the French are kicked out. All those resources, uranium and oil, gold and all, gone. And they will soon have their own currency. The French franc won't be used there anymore. And the Americans had a base about 1,000 miles, I think it was. I don't know the distance now, don't hold me on that. It was a good distance anyway, several hundred miles west of the capital. Is it Niamey, you call it, whatever, anyway, the west capital. And the other day the Russians went marching into it and went all over it. And the Americans were there. They couldn't do a thing. Now, the Americans were told to leave, and they're negotiating. They're doing their best not to be forced to leave. They claim they're vital there for defense and to protect against ISIS. I don't think too many are buying that anymore. I would guess that within the end of this year there'll not be an American in any part of sub-Saharan Africa or the Sahel area. Your man, that Austin, Lloyd Austin, says they'll need a base in West Africa, so they're desperately looking for bases in Africa. But we can see that brains of Putin, and to a lesser extent, Chairman Z, they're gradually denuding the West of territory, of friends, of land, of resources, and they're gradually de-dollarizing so that the dollar will eventually be no good. So when they destroy the dollar, the Americans can only print money, and you have a Zimbabwe situation. And as well as that, the Americans have for the last time seized the money of Russia. As America begins to go bankrupt, I reckon they'll take every penny in international bonds they can get their hands on. There are about I think about 6 billion still in international bonds in the United States Treasury, and I don't think anyone's ever getting that back. Now, of course, Biden has another while to go. Will Trump manage to hold on? It's debatable. I think the deep state will manage to kill off all anti-green, socialist, cultural Marxist mass migration fight in Europe and in North America. I think they will probably manage that. I mean, look what they're doing to Trump. I mean, and they can do that. The courts ruled that Biden wasn't mentally competent to stand trial, and yet he's mentally competent to be in charge of the war in Ukraine. I mean, this is the depths they go to, and they persecute Trump all the way. He might get through it all. I hope he does. He had 80,000 at a rally in New Jersey the other night, and that's not a Democrat state. So that's the story there, folks. But going back to the war, you see now what's happening. Putin is playing them for fools, and they are fools. Now the next thing, just one last sentence. The next thing they're coming for is your children in Ireland, in Britain, in Germany. Germany's introducing conscription at 18. The British are bringing out a kind of a voluntary thing where young men can go and join and have a bit of fun. And once they get their name down, as soon as the thing gets serious, they'll be conscripted. A problem they may have with conscription is what will they do with all the Africans and all the Muslims in Germany? How are they going to conscript John Joe Fitzpatrick, Paddy Dooley, and Mick Fitzmaurice or Paddy Martin? How are they going to conscript them and not conscript Muhammad Al Akbar or Jasm Muhammad? How are they going to avoid conscripting one and not the other? This was a problem in Northern Ireland during the Second World War. De Valera told Churchill, "You're not going to conscript any Irish people. I'll tell them not to join." And the northern people in that situation wouldn't. So what Britain put in was voluntary service. And some nationalists joined the British Army, very few, but a lot of Unionists joined the British Army. But they could select their regiment. A lot of them chose medical schools and cooking and all that type of thing. Some of them did go to the front and some of them died there. That's true. So I'm just telling you that governments have to find a way where they have a mixed race of dealing with conscription, and it's a lot more difficult than if you have a homogenous society. For example, in Iceland, where I went there to see, they're all Icelandics, so if they conscripted them there, every one of them would have to go. They're going to have a problem now because of migration, and it'll end up that the West will not be able to raise any kind of a midland army at all. And I would recommend people, look, you get a job, don't be joining any army in Europe, in America, or Canada. Because even if Trump gets back, he's only there for 4 years. The idiots in America will go back to the goodies. The Democrats will offer them some kind of an amendment to their medical aid or medical care, and they'll vote for that. So I think that I have to come to the conclusion that we may be looking at a situation where this left voting socialist craving population, weak population, will not change. It's too big a risk to choose a career on the hopes that it will. You can't do that. If you choose any career where the Irish government, for example, has a say in, we might put them out, we might jail some of the Irish government and all that, but in the end of the day we might not, and then you're in this job and you're forced to arrest the like of me for speaking my mind. That's the situation. So they will be stripped of recruits, but they'll recruit all the migrants. How they'll do with them is another day's work. Okay, we'll see you back for something else. 11 minutes. Good luck and goodbye, and comment underneath, and thank you for your comments up to now.